The Secrets of Middle-earth is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give.
You're listening to The Secrets of Middle-earth, where we discuss the hidden themes and deeper layers found in the works of J.R.R. Tolkien, whether in his writings or in any of the media derived from them. Be sure to follow The Secrets of Middle-earth on Apple Podcasts, YouTube Music, Spotify, or any podcast directory or app. And you can find us on social media. We are on Facebook at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia. We are on X at SQPN, or on Instagram, where we are at StarQuest Network. And don't forget that you can get your own official Secrets of Middle-earth merchandise, including our awesome t-shirt, at sqpn.com/merch. It's a great way for you to support our show and to show your love for Tolkien and his wonderful world of Middle-earth. And joining me today on the podcast are Jeff Haecker. Hello there, Jeff.
Hey, Thomas.
And Patrick Mason. Hi, Pat.
Howdy, Thomas.
So this is a very special episode of our podcast because the script is telling me that it is our 50th main feed episode since our relaunch 2 years ago. And is it?
Yeah, our first episode when we our pre-Rings of Power episode, I think was number 28. And so
okay. Nice.
So this is 78. So and then the Patreon recording we just did is not included in this because this is only ones on the main feed. So
okay, great. Yeah, and so yes, thank you listeners for supporting the show. It's been a wild ride, and I'm so glad that we get to do this. It is fitting that this is our 50th because today we are celebrating the return to the big screen of Middle-earth as we are discussing the new feature-length anime Lord of the Rings film, Lord of the Rings War of the Rohirrim. But before we get into that, Jeff, do you have any news for us this time around?
Yeah, the only things I saw were, while it's not been officially renewed, Amazon has not come out and said we're renewing Rings of Power for season 3. The creators have, the showrunners have basically said they're working on it, and I think we're still going with the unofficially renewed at this point because they're working on writing it at this point. And maybe they're just saying that and it's further along. I don't know, but that was the only thing I saw, so it kind of matches what they've been saying. And the other thing I saw that thought that was interesting and maybe kind of funny for us is Philippa Bowens, who is a writer of the original Lord of the Rings Jackson trilogy, said when she was in a recent interview, she was talking about other potential spinoffs. She said, if there's an appetite for it, we've got more stories. There's a ton of stories left to be told. There and some really, really interesting ones. But my preference would be after Hunt for Gollum would be to look at these standalone stories. And then we got really ambitious, and then if we got really ambitious, there are some epic particular stories that could translate into that more traditional epic trilogy format. So I just thought it was interesting. We did a whole spinoff pitch episode recently for the patrons that'll be on the main feed in a month or two. So we'll y'all can listen to more about that. But yeah, I thought it was interesting that and I think we knew that there was another full length film being developed, if not written, but we don't know what it is yet. I think they announced there was Hunt for Gollum and then one other one was
definitely not Hunt for Gollum 2.
It's Hunt for Gollum 2 and 3.
No.
But anyway, yeah, I thought that was interesting. So hopefully we'll, which is great, more material for us to cover. But yeah, that was all the news that I saw this week, aside from the big news of the movie of War of the Rohirrim being in theaters. So
nice. Yeah. And how many times did each of you see it?
I've seen it twice. Pat and I saw it together the opening day, and then I saw it again yesterday. I don't know if I've
only been able to see it the one time so far.
Yeah, same. Yeah. I saw it once with my brother, not at our very local theater, the small 6-screen theater wasn't showing it, so we had to go a few towns over which was fine. That theater's not as nice, but we put up with it. We had the theater mostly to ourselves, which is nice in a way because I don't like crowded theaters, but also disappointing because I wish there were more there to see people there to see this movie. But before we get too deep into it, Jeff, did you want to read the plot summary?
Yeah, I'll read the summary. So set 183 years before the War of the Ring, Lord of the Westmarch Freka calls a witan or a council after a long absence from the halls of King Helm Hammerhand. He states the king should strengthen Rohan by marrying his daughter Hera to Freka's son Wolf, but the king rebuffs this offer. He tells Freka, let's take it outside, and they go and have a fist fight like you do. And Freka dies from a single blow. And Wolf, threatening to take revenge, is banished. Seasons pass, and Hera, her cousin Freylof, her guard, and her lady Olwen are out riding. They find the body of an Easterling and encounter a crazed Mumakil, which is what they call the Oliphants. She lures it into a swamp to be devoured by a watcher in the water, but is captured by Wolf's men, who has united the tribes of the Wildmen to take revenge on Helm and crown himself king. She offers herself in marriage to stop the war, but Wolf is enraged with bloodlust. Olwen rescues Hera, and they return to Edoras to warn Helm. Angry that Freylof let Hera be captured, Helm sends Freylof to Dunharrow, but he says he will always remain loyal to Rohan. Helm calls his banners as they prepare for war, but one of his lords has turned traitor. Wolf brings his attack, including Mumakil riders, to Edoras, but Hera has learned of the treachery and evacuates Edoras to the Hornburg. Helm's eldest son dies in defense of Edoras, and Helm is injured. His younger son is captured in the escape and is killed by Wolf at the gates of the Hornburg. Helm falls into sleep while recovering from his injuries, while Hera begins to prepare the defenses. Wolf begins the siege while the long winter has come and starts to build a mighty siege tower. Helm recovers and sneaks out to kill the enemy with his bare hands. Hera follows him, and they also encounter orcs and trolls taking rings off the dead. They make a break for the gates, but they are frozen shut. However, Helm is able to pry them open and get Hera in before closing them. He kills many of the attackers and dies frozen stiff, standing in defense of the gates. Hera decides to evacuate the fortress through a secret passageway and seeks the aid of a great eagle who is nesting above the fortress to carry Helm's armor to Freylof. The eagle takes the armor, and Wolf begins the assault. She faces him in single combat and wins, but he goes back on his word to call off the attack. The remaining defenders set fire to the siege bridge, and Freylof arrives to rout the siege. Wolf again tries to kill Hera, but she kills him first. And she counsels her son to let the Wildmen go, and he is crowned king in Edoras. Hera sets off on an adventure to tell the wizard Gandalf of the rings. Or I guess of the orcs taking rings.
What does Mordor want with rings? Such a weird thing.
And I like the other orc who's like, it's not my problem.
Yeah.
Right.
The less I know, the better.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
And they put that in the trailer, just to remind you,
Yeah, they made it seem like in the trailer it was going to be a big part of the movie, but it was like it was one scene, and it did give us the cool action scene of Helm beating the troll barehanded and doing a 40-foot anime jump into the air to take it down.
Right, yeah. And of course, we also had, though, our cameo appearance and single line of dialogue from Saruman the White. Yes.
But it was, as we noted last time, or a recent one episode, it was archival footage or archival audio of Christopher Lee rather than AI generated or something. So I'm glad they did that instead of an AI or something.
It was funny, though, because when he comes in and says, his single line of dialogue, which is something like, if you should ever need assistance, please call on me, my lord. And then I look over to my brother and he laughs and says, that's all you get. One line. But yeah, no. So what was your guys' first impressions of this movie? What did you think, Jeff?
Yeah, I thought it was really good. I had a lot of fun watching it. it's animated, of course, as we said, it's an anime style, and it was very stylized. So if you're going and wanting like realistic animation, and in some scenes there is, but it's also kind of stylized, like some of the horses running, they're not like exactly running like a real horse would run, or some of the things like that. And it may have just been a cost saving measure to not fully animate that, because the more details you put in, the more expensive and the more time it takes. But I thought it was a pretty good adaptation of a story. I have a few nits I can pick, and I'm sure we will, but overall I just had a lot of fun watching it. And yeah, it's just amazing to get back to the theater to see a Tolkien movie. And hopefully this is, not the best of the movies that will come. Hopefully, as we mentioned, some of these upcoming ones will be better, or will be, just as good. And I'd love to see more of this style, or more of, similar type of animated style for this. But yeah, overall, I really liked it. And, unlike Pat, who was rocking back and forth in his chair, cautiously optimistic.
I was going to say, Pat, were there any flames, or in this case, frost across your face while watching this movie?
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah, there were. And it primarily has to do with some of the animation choices that they made.
Yes. Yeah.
They went with a style of mostly hand-drawn 2D foreground and 3D generated layout background.
Mm-hmm.
And the interspersing of those two was done very poorly. Just generally speaking, it was hard to watch in a lot of places. When the action scenes were going, it was not noticeable, so that was really good. But when we weren't actioning, we were just, riding across the plains or talking or so. It pulled me out of the world. And it reminded me a lot of Star Wars Episode 2 and 3, where you could tell like it was just actors and blue screen, like, and that was it. Like it was just these people on this completely, and it just wasn't synced right. It just, you felt like, yeah, they're just on a blue screen, and all that's been kind of added later.
Right.
That's what it felt like to me. And generally speaking, though, I really enjoyed the movie. But those parts, it would pull me out, and I'd be like, like, why did you do it this way? You did so many other things well, and then you did this.
That's interesting, because I recorded last night Secrets of Star Wars, and I was talking to our friend Catherine Laffrey a bit before we recorded that, and she said the same thing you did, Pat, about the mix of the 2D and 3D elements, where the 3D elements made the 2D elements look flat in some cases. And for me, it was definitely the most noticeable were those shots where they were trying to make it look epic and sweeping, like backgrounds and stuff. I was like, ooh, that didn't land right. Like, something about like the quote unquote camera panning across the 3D landscapes. It looked muddled. It looked almost PlayStation 2 ish, some of the backgrounds, if that makes sense. Yeah, like they weren't crisp or sharp in any way, and then some of the 2D elements would look very, very two-dimensional against the 3D background. But I guess for me, except for that, like I was just able to just, I'm like, okay, turn that part of my brain off. and like you said, Pat, in the action sequences and in the character bits and in the story stuff, I didn't notice that. It was when there was nothing else going on and they just wanted you to look at the quote unquote pretty backgrounds that I noticed it the most. But otherwise, besides that, I really enjoyed this movie a lot. The changes that I thought they would make, they did make. So I wasn't surprised by any of the lore changes. And I honestly thought it was done respectfully. you know, in terms of the kind of story they were telling, the changes made sense for a film adaptation taking place in the Jackson verse. You know, I just felt that, yeah, there was nothing like the kind of things you encounter in Rings of Power where it really does kind of break the lore, and you're just, and I just have to compartmentalize it and say alternate timeline, and just, you know.
Yeah, you're just yelling at the screen, why did you do that? Like, there was no reason for it. Yeah.
Right. Whereas this, I felt it does not at any point run roughshod over the established lore. And yeah, I felt it did a good job of just making you feel like you were in that same world again that the Peter Jackson movies established, while also being animated. Like, it felt like an animated installment, kind of like how this makes sense, how the show What If definitely feels like it's part of the MCU, even though it's an animated show.
Yeah, and I think a big part of it too is the music, because they use a lot of the same themes. You know, they use the classic Rohan, the you know, the violins or whatever they are, you know, playing their kind of high notes as they sweep across the plains, which is kind of your first, we first really see like Edoras in the Two Towers movie. Yeah. So yeah, and the music I think also was a big part of that, and I thought it was really cool to actually see, because in the movie, in just going off the Jackson movies, I don't remember as much from the book, but you actually get like what kind of the nation of Rohan is like, because you have these lords of Rohan who are, you know, a council of nobles, and they each have their bannermen that they will, you know, contribute to the war. And I think in the movie, you know, Théoden's, he calls the banners, but you don't really say that, you know, you don't get individual people's names. Where in this one, you actually meet one, and then who is the traitor, but you also learn about the Shield Maidens, who are kind of their own kind of clan among the nobles, who have, you know, mostly kind of have died off or have, you know, have grown of old age. But you know, I thought it was cool finding out that Olwen, who was Hera's maid, you know, or her, you know, her lady that was kind of her maidservant, was a Shield Maiden. I thought that was a really cool touch, and how they were their own group, because when the men all died or were off fighting, they had to defend Rohan, and they, you know, had a seat at the council. It may have been a silent seat where, you know, they couldn't really act in matters of the kingdom, but they at least had a seat there. So I thought that was really cool.
They were recognized.
Culture of Rohan. Yeah,
like maybe they didn't have voting rights or at the council, you know, like, but you know, and weren't like a lord, because they weren't a lordship really of their own. And you're more like a group of people. Yeah,
and they talk about how the lords have retreated to their halls or to their keeps or whatever, their strongholds. And in the Jackson movies, you don't really see that. You really only see Edoras as one, and then Helm's Deep is another one that's been abandoned that they go to, you know, flee to in Two Towers. So this, I thought, was cool that you kind of get that a little bit more fleshed out in this movie. You get that kind of culture, that, you know, that makeup of Rohan, that I thought was really cool.
Right. I thought maybe they would mention or bring in Aldburg, which is the original capital of the nation before Edoras was built. Apparently it's in Lotro or Lord of the Rings Online. But it is on some of the Tolkien's maps too. But no, they didn't bring that up. But you do get the sense of Rohan as a wider nation in this, and more than just Edoras and Dunharrow and the Hornburg. Yeah. Like you get the idea that there's more going on.
Yeah, you get a big shot of the map, and you even see more of Gondor just on the map, but you actually get to see, like, you see Minas Tirith is just like the capital city up here in the tip of it, and there's a whole kingdom kind of south of it that you don't really get to touch on much in the movies, and you don't really get to see. You just see Minas Tirith. So I thought that was a cool, and that kind of opens it up. You could do stuff like you could do in the movie or something and show some of that. So I thought it just was kind of a cool opening up of the world.
Yeah, I know that. I just liked the way they were able to take Helm's daughter, who's, and I know they were talking about this in the development of the movie, about how like Helm's daughter is mentioned, but she's never named and has no speaking lines of dialogue in the appendices. And they were able to take that character and integrate her into this story and essentially make her the protagonist of the movie, and made it feel natural. It did not feel forced or feigned in any way, at least in my experience of watching the movie. You know, she was Hera was a good fit for this because she's a good lens, I think, to view the events that are going on. You know, because this war, both in this film and in the source material, is sparked because of Freka trying to marry his son into Helm's family as a power play, and that goes horribly wrong. You know, it's interesting to see events from Hera's point of view, and also because otherwise, you know, and I've seen it pointed out, like, it would be difficult to make any of the other major players the protagonist, you know, because Helm dies later, both his sons die, and Freyalaf spends most of the war in Dunharrow. So there's really only one choice if you want to get the broadest perspective on these events, is Helm's daughter. And so it was kind of a genius move, and I think they pulled it off very well. It didn't feel to me like, you know, the way it doesn't feel like the way Rings of Power chose Galadriel as the warrior princess protagonist. It feels completely different from that. It feels way more natural and fitting in this version. What do you guys think?
Yeah, and she is a warrior princess. She is a princess of Rohan.
Right.
And
yeah.
And I don't think in the book that Freka is actually a noble of Rohan.
He is. Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know if he was actually like the Lord of the West March, or if he just he says he has noble blood and has has land there, so that's why he kind of claims. I didn't know if he was actually a lord of of equal footing with the others, but yeah, the whole thing is because Helm is saying he's received an offer, or I think Freka says, "We've heard you received an offer from Gondor to marry her to a prince of Gondor, or to a Gondor noble or something." And he wants to strengthen Rohan instead of saying you're basically just a vassal state of Gondor. Like, we should strengthen our own. And then Hera says, "I don't want to marry." Like, she's very similar to Eowyn in some ways. Well, she wants to marry Aragorn eventually, but yeah, very similar to Eowyn. And part of what you're saying about it being like she being the lens character is, I kind of also took it as Eowyn is telling a story. So Eowyn might be an unreliable narrator. Like, she could be embellishing the story, and because they talk about in the books that Rohan doesn't really write much down, even though in this it looks like they do, but in the books at least they say they're more of a oral tradition.
Yep.
So there's going to be embellishments and things that are added to the story based on a lot of factors, including who's telling it. So I kind of also took it as like maybe Eowyn's embellishing things a little bit to because Eowyn's a shield maiden, she's a warrior as well, so
I'll bet she added Gandalf.
That part.
I thought it. I almost put in the summary because I almost joked that she goes off to meet a ranger, but she has to discover who he is or something.
I thought when she said she got the message, I thought it was going to be like the Grey Company. She's like going to be recruited to join like the Rangers or something, but when it was Gandalf, I was like, oh okay.
The way to hook Gandalf in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
I thought they did, like you said, using her as a lens character you can opt to make if you're going to tell a first person story, you can opt to make your first person protagonist the, hero of all things, right? Which is kind of what we saw with Galadriel and why that was so problematic in so many ways. Or you can make them part of the story, right? And you could take the lore and understand where they would have been or sort of develop it from there. And I thought they did a good job with that. I thought they did a good job with her name and with figuring out where she would have been in the various places during the battles and the war, and kind of her place in it and what she did and didn't do. I like the fact that she is not, the most skilled blades woman. That Wolf clearly has her on the ropes through most of the fight. Even at the end, she kind of wins more or less as a feint and a kind of a luck thing.
Will of Iluvatar.
Right. I like the fact that it does not, her presence in the story and her being the protagonistic kind of driving force of the story does not lessen the role of Helm or Hama or Freyloft or her other brother whose name escapes me all of a sudden.
Oh, yeah, Haleth. Yeah,
all the H names.
But with elves it's always F, and now it's always H.
Always, and if half elves are always E. So I also thought, and it didn't strike me, and I apologize to everybody who's about to hear this because you won't be able to unsee it but this was very much a Lord of the Rings version of the Disney movie Brave, with Merida.
Oh, dude, you're right. It is.
I'm sorry, you will not be able to unsee it. But
Except
we have
mom was dead and not a bear. But
so there's far fewer bears. But this is a princess who doesn't want to get married, and it causes disruption within the family and between the various groups, and it's going to come to war and all that. And it resolves differently. And so there's a lot of, same kind of tone to the name Merida and Hela, or Hera. Although the way they were saying it in the movie, you could have gone either way with that. But, and it hit me and I was like, oh my goodness. So I almost feel like the people who did Brave kind of stole the story. Tolkien wrote that first, but it felt very, very similar. But there's a way to tell stories with a protagonist, and make that protagonist the be end all, action movie star, which is fun for action movies. And there's a way to do it where it's like, no, they're the protagonist, but there's a lot else going on, and they don't have to be the best at everything all the time.
Yeah, I mean, she gets captured at one point, very easily. They just put a sack over her head and drag her away. Yeah.
She had just killed, led an Oliphant to its death. So
I mean, that was pretty cool. Yeah, but it's like it's one of those moments where the hero has done something incredible and then they're knocked out. Yep. I felt like, and I can already, as soon as I got out of the movie, my brother and I were talking about it on the drive home, and I'm like, I can just hear people already not liking this movie because just because there's a warrior woman protagonist. And I was like, look, okay, so I've actually been reading recently through some of the material that inspired Tolkien in the first place, the Eddas. In fact, so I've been reading through the poetic Eddas for my friend Andrew Snyder, who runs the Mythic Mind podcast. We've been doing these little, kind of like our Silmarillion read through. We've been reading through the poetic Edda, and we've just gotten to the section where the Valkyries are there pretty heavily. And it's interesting that in okay, so the first thing you'll notice about Norse mythology is that it's not very coherent because there's a lot of inconsistencies and contradictories in it. And one of the major, because it wasn't like Tolkien who was carefully crafting this coherent mythology. These are a bunch of stories and oral traditions, kind of like you were saying, Jeff, coming from all over the place. And one of the things the Norse couldn't seem to decide on is whether these warrior women, the Valkyries, were kind of semi-divine beings like the Aesir or the gods, or whether they were mortal women. Because in some traditions, they're actually just mortal women. And so we've gotten to the part where that version of the Valkyries as like these mortal warrior women play a big part in the Eddas. So it's like, and the Rohirrim are so obviously based on the Norse and on the Anglo-Saxons that to have essentially a Valkyrie type character as the protagonist in a movie about Rohan makes a certain amount of sense. So I don't want to hear it that it's not, like.
Well, I thought she was going to ride the eagle at one point. Like, I thought she was going to fly on it.
So did I. Yeah.
I thought she was going to fly the eagle along with the armor, but because they set that up in the beginning, I didn't put it in the summary, but the first scene of the movie is Hera riding through the plains, and she's chasing these two eagles. I think one of them is supposed to be like a fledgling eagle, like a younger one, but they're the great eagles. And she pulls out a giant, pig leg or something.
I was saying it's that same
ham hock.
It looks like that meat that you get out of the walls in Castlevania. If you whip the wall, and it's like, and when she pulls that out of her saddlebag, the other people in the theater laughed.
Yeah, but she's basically like, she's throwing it up to the eagle, and it catches it, and it like lands, and it's almost gonna let her kind of touch its beak, but then it screeches and flies off, and that comes back later because the eagle nests above Helm's Deep, or above the fortress, and so she has to climb. She has to make this climb to ask, because she says it's said that the eagles can understand the speech of men and they can converse with wizards. So she, basically begs the eagle to carry this armor to Freylof, because, they want to use it as a symbol to strike fear into the hearts of the attacking wild men during the siege. So, but I thought the eagles, that was another thing I was curious to see what they were going to do. Because of course we know, eagles are not the Deus Ex Machina, or, well, they are kind of, they're the but they're not, there's always the joke of, why don't the eagles just fly them to Mordor? And it's because, well, for one, they're kind of are the will of Manwë. They follow his will, but two, like, these giant eagles would be seen from miles away. So of course they're not going to fly them all the way there, because they'd just be caught immediately. So I was curious what they were going to do, if they were going to, really be a huge plot point, if they were just going to be a small thing. But I thought they were used well in the movie. I thought because again, it is, the eagles kind of follow the will of Manwë, who's following the will of Iluvatar. So it's kind of like Iluvatar is wanting this to happen because he's going to need the line of Theoden to show up at Pelennor Fields to save Gondor. Then lets them, distract Sauron at the gates of Mordor. So it's all part of that grand plan, is what I'm kind of headcanoning it.
I also just like that, although they're intelligent in the sense that, like she said, they can understand human speech and they have a secret tongue that wizards know, but they're also very much wild too. They don't necessarily like humans. I get the sense that they're kind of suspicious of humans, and you get that sense from The Hobbit when in the book, when the Great Eagle is talking to Gandalf and is like, men shoot at us, but then admits, well, but it's, I can see why they shoot at us. We try to steal their sheep, but so you can see that there's like, not sometimes tense relations between humans and eagles. So like, I like that it's like she needs to gain the trust of that particular Great Eagle. It's not like they immediately want to help the free people or whatever. It's like,
it's just waiting in the wings.
Yeah, literally.
They have their own lives. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought they were used effectively, and they there wasn't like the eagles are coming moment where there's like a ton of them. It was just, that one particular eagle, and it was effective foreshadowing how they set it up in the first scene of the movie where she's like, okay, I'm like this particular, and it was like a white eagle. That was interesting. Yeah. Or like at least like gray.
I think it was white. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that was true of all the mythical, semi-mythical creatures that they brought in. You had the Oliphants or the Mumakil.
Yeah,
yeah. The fact they only had 3 of them, I thought that was really good. I did not want to see, and I think a lot of people may have been disappointed by this, that it wasn't this huge war, this huge armies versus armies. And I'm like, that's not how Rohan was. Like, right. If you were able to summon all the banners and everything and you had time, you could maybe get, like, you got what you got at Pelennor Field. But the reality is, if you have like 2 single houses going against each other, you're talking hundreds of combatants, and that really was how it was in the Middle Ages, like in the medieval times, or during Christendom, or however you want to put it. Like, European battles were not big affairs. Like, if you go back and compare them to like the ancient Near East, and hundreds of thousands of combatants versus hundreds, these armies that you're just puzzled about, like, how do they even have this many people fighting against each other? And some of that was still going on even in the Byzantine Empire. You don't have that in Europe in this time frame. It's very small armed forces, versus very small other armed forces, which is why the Vikings were so very effective. Like,
right, like clashes back then were between small, very well trained professional forces.
People who were knighted or nobles.
Yeah, knights.
And then you eventually have more. You have the common man can be the archers, and that kind of was a big, from my understanding of medieval history, which I'm not as up on. When you added kind of your common man who can shoot a bow, that was kind of a big leap forward in warfare, because now it's not just a few hundred people versus a few hundred knights versus a few hundred knights. It's knights versus you have all these people who can shoot a bow and arrow.
Well, even the longbow is like, it takes a lot of training to use effectively. And literally, like, the church opposed the invention and introduction of the crossbow into medieval warfare because it made war that much easier. Yeah. Because once they could mass produce the crossbow, they could raise peasant armies. It's just like, because you could train any farmer off the field to shoot a crossbow. They didn't need a whole lot of training or strength to use it. It's a mechanical device.
They were already pretty strong, probably, because they're farmers to work with their hands.
Yeah. So it's like, and that once you had those large peasant armies, and we think of large armies nowadays, but we have the 20th century industrial warfare is a complete different beast from medieval warfare. Yeah.
Not honestly, not comparable almost in any fashion. So, I like the fact that it wasn't like a horde of Mumakil. It was 3, and one of them went mad, right? And we saw Hera kind of deal with that. And the fact that, we got the Watcher in the water, right? And she sort of knew where it was and knew how to, quote unquote, stir it up.
Yeah.
So that it would grab it. And I thought that was all really good and really well done, because it wasn't like over fantasying it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because you're in the Third Age, right? And it's sort of the slow downgrading of all the magical creatures. Like, we're down to one dragon. He's up north and he's asleep most of the time.
Not a single elf in this movie.
Yeah, that's right. And you have this sort of, you go into the deep forest, and I love the line, the the Shield Maiden says is like, yeah, she knows what's in there. And Freyla being like, does she know what's in there? And she's like, she knows.
It reminded me that particular Watcher, and I like how they give the sense that there's more than one Watcher, because they call it a Watcher in the water. Yeah. But this one, where it pretends to be an island and has trees growing on it, I'm like, it's a Zelda boss.
Yes.
It looked like a Zelda boss.
Yeah, or like, I've never played Zelda, and that's exactly the thought I had. Like, watching my wife and kids.
Yeah, I've seen my brother play enough Zelda games where I'm like, this is like, they would do this if they have a boss where it's an Octorok, but it's grown to giant size and it's in this pond, and you like, yeah, that's what I immediately
devours that. It just devours that Mumakil.
The whole thing. My brother and I like look at each other like, what?
Yeah, it's like it gets stuck like halfway down the gullet and it has to widen its mouth even further. Yeah. You're like, oh, that's not disturbing.
But yeah, and I was like, but like Watchers are like sort of, they're eldritch abominations. They're like they're I think they're basically nameless things. So they're this kind of like, quasi Lovecraftian abomination. So I'm like, okay, yeah, I can buy that it can eat an entire Oliphant in one go.
But I like what I don't know, Wolf's main advisor, I can't remember his name, but
Targ. Yeah, I felt so bad for that guy. I'm like, you're General Rommel.
Yes.
You're a competent person having to listen to this lunatic give you all of this terrible military ideas, and you just have to do what he says, and you can't do anything about it. But at one point, I turned to my brother, and I forget it, and I said, Targ should have slit this guy's throat a long time ago.
One criticism I do have, one of the nits I could pick, is Wolf seemed a little bit over the top as a villain, like just so.
I liked that.
And I mean, yeah, I just didn't really find it that believable. Like, they stepped outside to have their fist fight, and Freka hit him first. Freka hit first. He hit Helm first, and then Helm, one punch killed Freka, and Wolf is just, his men are there ready to fight, and Helm, I thought, I know it's the book, but Helm was like, calm down, lad. This was an accident. You don't have to lose. No one else has to die. And then Wolf just, like, for the rest of his life is just so angry. Like, he's just he doesn't care. He just wants to. He doesn't even want. He wants to be king of Rohan. But then when they're in the actual siege, he's just like, I just need to kill everybody. I need to kill them all. Like, it just got a little bit over the top for me.
He's a whinier, more annoying Kylo Ren. No, but Kat, what were you going to say about Targ?
So Targ's standing there on the banks, and he sees it happening. He's like, I never thought I'd see one, like a Watcher, a Watcher. I never thought I'd get to see one. And then he has that short exchange with Hera before they bag her head. But it made it all feel very medieval fantasy. Yes, like there's stuff in that woods over there. There are wizards who are around, sure, because I think they mentioned it a couple times about there being wizards. And the Mumakil are, a lot scary. Well, I mean, if you've ever been in front of an actual elephant, they're terrifying, but especially if they're enraged. But the Mumakil is even worse, right? It's bigger and it's got more tusks and it's got a bunch of people riding it. So
it's like a dinosaur-sized elephant. Yeah.
But I just thought that they didn't overdo it, right? And I think that would have taken away from the story pretty dramatically, to be honest. I think this would have made it less of a Rohan story.
Yeah, I like that magic. Just like in some fantasies you have where like magic is just a part of everybody's life, and that, for me, that always kind of robs. It ceases to be magic. It just starts to be this thing that everybody knows and everybody encounters. Whereas like you say, Pat, if it's on the fringes of the known, you know, oh, it's in those woods over there that nobody goes in. Or, yeah, there are wizards, but who's really ever seen one? You know, like they know that wizards exist, but nobody's seen one. Like that's the kind of magic that I like in a fantasy setting where it's mysterious and that people believe it exists, but it's not a part of their everyday life. You know? Yeah.
You have that. Yeah. Along those lines, you have the supernatural a little bit in the fortress because there's the old lady caretaker.
Oh, the old crone.
She was great. They find a wedding gown that was supposed to be for a bride who's going to marry the captain of the keep. And then, they say, you can't, don't touch it. And then they say she still haunts these halls. And then Hera, because there's a secret passageway in Helm's room, which is how Helm's getting out to. I couldn't tell in the movie if he was getting out, like if he just got out the one time or if he was getting out all the time to go and just kill the wild men, or if he was getting out and then getting back in, or if he just got out the one time. But she finds the passageway and she's going out, you see kind of a form that has like a dress on. You kind of just see glimpses of it. You don't see a full figure. So I was thinking that's probably what that was referencing. And like, so there is that little bit of supernatural, or preternatural element to it, along with all the fantasy stuff. But because normally we see a little bit of ghost type things like in the Dead Marshes in Lord of the Rings, but we don't see a ton of that. So I thought that was kind of an interesting thing to, and it could have just been a trick of her mind or Eowyn embellishing the story that there was this thing. But I thought that was an interesting kind of aspect of it too.
I liked how they did the bit with the Dunlendings believing that there's the Wraith of Helm going around killing them, because that's from the book. And there's this one line in the appendices where they say Helm stalked among them like a snow troll.
Yeah.
And so I like what they did. They clearly have Helm going around killing people at some point, but there is also a snow troll that's going around killing people.
Turns out there's also a snow troll.
Because like he's the one eating the bodies.
Yeah.
Is the snow troll.
It has the same kind of its head shape is kind of the same as Helm's helmet, it's
helmet,
got the horns on it, and so they think it's Helm, but it's a snow troll. But then Helm is also out there,
right,
barehanded.
It's a snow troll that these couple of orcs have brought. Great orc banter.
Yeah, it really was like it. It harkened a lot back to the orcs that Samwise spies out in Mordor.
Oh, Shagrat and Gorbag. Yeah.
It's very similar kind of banter. I don't know why we're doing this. I hope it's over soon.
My brother and I were joking that Mordor didn't issue them proper winter gear because they're mostly half naked. And I'm like, yeah. And Nick's like, yeah, Lugburs doesn't care about that stuff.
I thought the one was going to say, what do you smell? Man flesh. I thought it was going to.
Oh, right.
Like what they do with the Orakai. With
fresh meat.
Fresh meat. Yeah.
Yeah. And they're collecting rings off the bodies of the dead is what they've been sent to do. And I actually don't know whether if Sauron is still constructing a new body at this point or whether one of the Nazgul is in charge at the tower. Yeah. I don't actually know.
Sauron would be at Dol Guldur at this point. Still.
Right. Yeah. As the necromancer.
Right.
Yeah. I'm still going by that. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure minus Ithil is minus Morgul by this point.
Yeah.
And I think the Witch King is already established there. And so he's probably in charge, would be my guess.
Mm.
I think that's right, although I'm willing to be corrected on the Discord.
Yeah, and I don't have the text in front of me to check the tale of years to check dates or anything.
Yeah.
But it's and the Jackson verse has always been fuzzy with dates, especially in the Third Age anyway. So not as much as the Rings of Power is, but there's been a little bit of time compression in the Peter Jackson movies. But one thing I did like is that they did not feel compelled to shoehorn hobbits into this movie.
Yeah.
But I felt that the young boy, the character of Leaf, was filling the hobbit role, though. He's, and in fact, he looks like Samwise.
He does kind of look like Samwise.
He looks like Samwise, and he's filling that role of kind of, the small, humble person who's way in over his head, but is, taught, the courage to do great things. And so I felt he was very Hobbit-like, even though he's obviously a human. But
No, I think that's very true, since hobbits get used as a vehicle for that for the sort of comedic relief, but also foil for, the difference between courage and fear is not the right word, because even when you're courageous, you're still afraid. But it's the sort of, when you give in to fear, terror, maybe. Cowardice. Sorry, that's the word I was looking for. So the difference between, heroism and cowardice, and how to act properly in different settings, and sort of he fills that role, and he was a very good character. They did a really good job with him. Yeah. As sort of I always find it funny, he was quote unquote Hera's like protector, which reminded me much more of like you're like a squire, basically.
Yeah, he's a squire. Yeah,
a squire is effectively what he was.
Yeah, and his job is to just hold that scroll and call out the names of the different lords as they come in. I love it when we first meet him and he introduces Helm, and he's like, they know their king when they see him. It's all right. You don't announce me,
Yeah. He reminds me a lot. There's a character in Game of Thrones, the TV show, who is a squire, and he's squire to the to one character, and then he gets put with the Lady Knight, basicly. And she's a much more of a knight than his last lord he served. All he used to do really was carry the wineskin around, and now he's like having to skin rabbits and cook meals and deal with armor, and he's out of his element a little bit. Brienne, that was her name.
So he basically gets Brienne put with like an actual paladin instead of
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought the world building was very good in that sense. Like Jeff, like we said before, of kind of building out Rohan and its relations with Gondor and stuff like that. I was just shaking my head though when Freka's like, become Gondor's lapdog, and I'm like, if anything, Gondor owes you guys for you keep sending troops to help them out of a bind all the time. And what they didn't really mention in this movie, though, but is clear in the appendices, is that Gondor wouldn't have been much help to Rohan at this point, because the reason why there's Southrons and Mumakil in the area to begin with is that at this point, Gondor is being attacked by the Corsairs and the Haradrim. So they wouldn't have been much help. They've got their own problems at this same moment. And and I like that we get to see Isengard before it's Saruman's fortress. It's been abandoned by the Gondorians, and the Dunlendings are squatting in it.
Yeah.
They don't control the tower.
Hilarious.
Yeah,
right.
They don't control the tower because it's impregnable and they don't have the keys. But they're in this camp, kind of squatting. Yeah, it was pretty hilarious.
Yeah, and I like the rescue scene. I like seeing Freyalof get some. He gets a little bit of action at the end, but he also gets that sort of rescue, which was great to see. it's interesting, and Jeff, you brought it up about Wolf being a little more unhinged, right? It comes out in the appendices like he's more interested in being king of Rohan, right? His father tries to set him up as, marrying Hera, and then Helm sees through it. He's like, well, if that happens, he's just going to kill my kids to make sure his kid gets on the throne.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and so, when his father dies, Wolf sort of goes the other way and raises, an army and comes back and tries. But like, as far as I could tell in the appendices, he doesn't like burn Edoras to the ground. He attacks it and takes it and then occupies it and then sends the force
part of the burning was Hera's. She started the fire.
Right.
She started the fire.
Scorched earth. Yep.
Because they were trying to stop the Mumakil because they were going to basically charge Edoras and break down break the walls down, and so they were trying to stop that from happening, and they used the fire because they stopped one in the middle of its charge, like they busted its knees or cut its tendons or whatever, and the other one was charging, and I think there were 3 that were charged. So I think there were 4. I think there was the first one that was the enraged one, and then there were 3 that were in the attack.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And one of the ones was stopped, one of the ones wouldn't go through the fire, and they kind of stopped it. And then there was the last one that did break down the wall on the other side, and that's when the elder son Hama did his Legolas attack on it, and and killed it himself. And I almost turned to you, Pat, and said that still only counts as one. But
I thought about saying it as well. But,
Haleth was very much a kind of Chris Hemsworth Thor character in this. That's the vibe I got from him. Whereas his father's son, he's his father's son, where his younger brother is the musician and the bard.
He's the bard and the archer.
Mm-hmm.
Loki.
Yeah. And nicer, less obnoxious Loki. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
But
it's kind of sad we don't get more of them. It would have been nice if we'd had a little more prior to the One Punch incident. With the family, maybe doing something else. I know that probably would have made the runtime longer, but I think it might have been worthwhile to see the family dynamic. Because, intellectually, you understand sort of where Helm is at when they get to Helm's Deep. Both of his sons have died. His throne has been burned. He's held up in this thing. He's been almost mortally wounded. And so you kind of get where his head's at. But I think if we had gotten to know his sons better, we would have felt it more. There would have been not just the intellectual understanding of where he was, but there would have been more of an emotional understanding where he was. So I think that would have been worth a longer runtime to get more time with them as a family and see them doing stuff. Whereas primarily we get a couple things with Hera. But it's almost always all war, pretty much.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. But I liked that each of them got their kind of hero, moment. And that thing with Helm on the causeway, but the bad guys did that thing where it's like, look, let's not rush him, but I'll just run up one at a time, the video game thing. But still, it was pretty awesome as he's taking out all these guys and is frozen in place upright. That is from the book. So that, I was wondering how they were going to handle that. And I thought that they did that perfectly. That was great. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think in the book too, wasn't it the younger son is killed when he goes out foraging and doesn't come back?
Right. That was so they changed that.
But I didn't. I'm not it has to be exactly like the book in this case because it's just it's a 2-page thing.
Right.
A lot less lore breaking than as we said, like Rings of Power or other things. So
or our contractually obligated Hobbit movie reference, like the Hobbit movies, like take a lot more liberties than this does, and they're in the same universe. So it's like, I did like how too in terms of the one major, really significant lore difference is the one I predicted. They gave Hera the kill. She kills Wolf instead of Freyalaf, which is in the appendices. But like I said, it made sense because in the context of this movie, because it's real. And from Wolf's point of view, the only conflict here is between him and Hera, because he doesn't even really care about Helm so much. He keeps when he's talking to himself, he keeps talking about she's got to suffer. She's got to learn that I'm in charge and all this stuff.
Yeah, we didn't really mention, but yeah, because they were friends growing up. Like I guess Hera and Wolf played together, and they had their fight or whatever. They were training or whatever you want to call it. And she actually accidentally cuts him around the eye, but they're still like they had a close relationship, and it's kind of like the Anakin Padme thing of he had he was infatuated with her, and she really didn't think of him that way, and even because she rebuffs the marriage offer, and then because she doesn't want to get married, but then when she gets taken to Isengard, she says, I'll marry you if you stop this madness. And he's like, you wouldn't have me, then you only want me to stop the,
and then like he accuses her of saying all this stuff she totally did not say. And I was like,
yeah,
what?
Because she even says, I tried to find you after you were banished. But I mean, which I don't know that the scouts of Rohan were doing their best work on this. If they couldn't find that there was this huge camp of wild men at Isengard, maybe we should go check that out and get more on that. But then she faces, because when the wild men, when they're actually finally breaking into when they're crossing the bridge, Helm or Wolf is sending them in. Hera's like, she comes out in the bride's dress that the lady was the old crone said don't put on, because she's married to death. Like that
was a great line. Who are you pledged to? Death.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
because she's gonna say something. Yeah, because she's basically says if I beat you, you'll because she's basically trying to buy the people time to get out, and to make for the mountain pass, and so she's trying to buy time and stopping him, and he agrees to stop the fighting if she wins, but then of course he backs out on it, and then poor Targ just gets it and gets the knife in the gut.
Oh yeah, I'm like because he's a full-blooded Dunlanding, and he long ago he has figured out that this half-breed Wolf doesn't really care about his people. He doesn't care about the Dunlandings. He's just using them. At one point, he tricks them. He's like, oh, yeah, the Hornburg's full of money. You'll get all this gold and stuff. And Targ's like, sir, the Hornburg was never used as a vault to store gold. And Wolf's like, they don't know that. And I'm like, two things. I was like, one, I was thinking to myself, Targ, stab this guy. I'm like, second, I was like, Wolf's not thinking this through, because what are they going to do when if you win and they find out there is no gold? They're just going to turn on you. I thought Wolf was deliciously evil. They really make you hate this guy.
Yeah, he was pretty over the top, which, yeah. It was entertaining to watch. I just thought I didn't necessarily believe it. But again, if I'm thinking of it as when telling a story, like they're going to embellish things. So, but Pat, as our resident engineer, I did want to ask you your thoughts on the siege tower. Like, would you sign off on that contraption?
The whole time I'm sitting there watching him build it, and I'm like, what is this thing supposed to be? Like, because they say siege tower, and I'm like, that's not. Okay. Then they start moving it and they start doing things with it, and I figure it out, and I'm like, are you kidding me? No. Come on.
I don't think the drum guy at the top was told.
I don't. Yeah, get up there and do some drums. Okay.
I was watching that the second time I saw it, and I think you see him jump off at the end. Like when the bridge is crashing down, you kind of see him like ride it down and like kind of jump off. I think
to me it looked like he fell off, and he looked terrified.
Yeah, thrown forward.
I'm in the. When it's out on home video, I'll rewatch it to be sure. But yeah, when the second time I saw it, I was like, because I didn't pay attention to the drum guy in the first one. I was like, oh, he's just drumming the beat to move this thing. I just thought it was going to be like those climb it to get over the wall.
Yeah,
But then it's like it was almost like the thing in like Sandlot when they're building that big contraption to get the ball. It was just so ridiculous.
Yes. Yeah.
Very
I was just thinking to myself, I'm like,
and then they set it on fire and it stops. It eventually, I'm like, that thing is so flimsy, and like, how much time have they? And they've been probably cutting down the trees that Treebeard has loved since they were little, seedlings or whatever. So they could have had the Ents and attack as well, but they did not do that. So,
Yeah, I was unimpressed with the siege tower. I have to admit, it was like, okay, this is a little. I mean, I get it; it's a big set piece for the very last battle and all that, but come on,
very silly. Yes,
yeah.
Some pretty smart, a pretty smart Dunlending engineer who could build that thing if you're listening to this, we should have said, but spoilers, of course, but like. It's not only a tower, but then they start drumming the beat, and it starts like it starts extending and extending.
Right.
It's like a 100-foot bridge or however long inside of this giant tower, and it's going to rotate down, and it's all it was kind of ridiculous, but.
And I like that this
I've seen take me out of it a little bit, but
yeah, I've seen large, heavy stuff rotate quickly. It does not end pretty. Especially when you get contact. I'm sorry. It would have been blown to smithereens.
It's rope, it's ropes and wood. It's not.
Yeah,
right.
Just some poor saps at the bottom, just be like pull, like pulling on these ropes, and I'm like, what? Wait, what? I'm like, I guess too bad all their Oliphants are dead, because like they couldn't use those apparently to move it, but and they couldn't have survived the winter anyway, because by that point it was the long winter, and but it's I did like the ending sword fight though between and it had a very Star Wars lightsaber duel vibe to it.
Yeah, it did.
I mean, this is the director who did The Ninth Jedi, so he seems to be a fan of Star Wars. So.
And Marvel too, because Olwen, Captain America, threw that shield, and Hera caught it just like they would in a Marvel movie.
Yeah,
it's like I just rewatched Falcon, or I just rewatched The Winter Soldier, and I was like, did they watch this too? Because Olwen threw it, and Hera like jumped up and caught it, and
like did a flip or something like that.
And I mean, I'm glad they didn't overplay the anime-ness, because I love anime. Like I love anime. I love all the ridiculous things that anime can do. But I'm glad they didn't I mean, they did it with like the siege tower, and then Helm had like a 40-foot jump to kill the troll.
Yeah,
and that was
he did that like 4 or 5 times in that battle. Just like, like Mario.
Yes, I've seen it. Boing, boing.
He was also fist fighting it, and like blocking its punches, or even like taking a punch from the troll. And just, like, punching it back. But I'm glad they didn't do like
he smashes its face in with his bare fist too. Yeah,
and
it looked like
kills it with the spear, but.
Yeah, it was so fun. It didn't look like, the trolls we're used to from the Jacksonverse. It looked like the trolls from the new God of War games, actually, is what it looked like. They have those same like giant horns on them, but
yeah, I just assumed it's like a some kind of troll we haven't seen in Lord of the Rings yet. So,
but yeah, I did like the ending. I like that Freyalaf does play a part in the battle. He shows up at the very end to like the Dunlendings think he's Helm's ghost because he's in Helm's armor.
Helm's armor, yeah.
And they're in front of the giant moon, like the super moon or whatever. And
and they ride down the same embankment that Éomer and his men ride down in the Two Towers movie.
Yeah, you'd think Saruman would have learned, like, we should maybe block that pass because the Rohirrim will just...
He wasn't there. He wasn't there yet.
He would have known. Like, he's a wizard. He would have known.
He wouldn't care, though. That was his problem. He did not care about the little people.
Yeah, he's the guy who, what does he call them? He calls the little band of gallopers in the books. He calls he does not care about these people. But yeah, like I liked that because like my brother said to me, he's like, if this movie had been made by different people, he's like, or by the people who made Rings of Power, the first thing they would have done is wrote Freyalaf out.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm glad they didn't. Right. Honestly, because that was my big concern. I'm like, because Freyalaf needs to be there because he's the beginning of the second line of kings. So, you know, he's got it would have been lore breaking if they had written him out. But no, yeah. And I like that bit at the end between, you know, when he has his coronation and that little, you know, I liked the cousin vibe between him and Hera. And I felt so bad for him when he gets banished by Helm. Yeah. I like that Helm's not a perfect character either. He has his pride blinds him sometimes, and he banishes his nephew, who's completely loyal to him. You know,
and he says, like, "You'll always have my sword." So,
and who would have thought that a lord called Thorn would be a traitor? Who would have thought? Like,
like guys, like, there's no need to worry about these Mumakil on our southern border, and that one's just mad and it got in. You know, it's fine. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. Lord Freyalaf is young. He doesn't know anything, and I'm like,
I didn't like real close to this guy now.
Yeah, I was like, wait a minute. Like, I liked that they drew attention when Hera was in Isengard to the seal on the letter, and then they revealed later it was Thorn's seal. So
yeah, I saw that in Isengard. And I was like, oh, and I mean, the guy, I already kind of suspected the guy was being sketchy, but then I saw that, I was like, oh, I bet that's a letter from that guy and from Rohan that he's gonna, you know, he's not gonna fight for Helm, or he's gonna hold back his spears or whatever. So
yeah.
But yeah, I like the ending. You know, it sets up Freya, like Hera. She can go off and have these adventures, and like she can, like, you could. I don't think they will, but they could do like a whole anime series, or they could do. You know, you could imagine that there are books or tales of her. You know, even though we don't know them, like, she's probably off adventuring. Like, she's probably being kind of like a ranger, just going around and kind of, you know, fighting for whoever needs someone to fight for her, or to fight for them. And that's the
thing. Yeah, like a lot of, like Aragorn says, a lot of the stories of the Rangers are simply not told because they do the jobs that keep people safe, but, you know, don't get recorded because it's not like a bard is following them around to record all their daring do and stuff.
Yeah, she didn't have her brother, or I forget his name, the who was kind of her guard / squire.
Leaf. Yeah.
Leaf. Yeah. She didn't have Leaf running around
but she did have Hama's, his, what are those? Not a harp. Like harp, I guess, or a lute or whatever.
Yeah.
Wasn't quite a lute.
Baliset? Is it a baliset?
Probably. We need an actual music person.
Yeah.
If anyone knows what that thing was, please let us know.
My brain defaults to harp because of the Pern books, and the harpers are such a big thing in that. But yeah, so like, I like that because at one point they're running out of firewood in the siege, and they consider burning Hama's harp, and it's like, no. She
tells the crone to burn it, and
she doesn't.
They take it, and you think it's going to be gone, but then I guess the crone saved it. I guess because Helm's in his, you know, fever dream sleep or whatever, and she's she's taking the firewood away because she's probably thinks he's going to die. So why waste it on the dead? Because yeah, it's a pretty rough spot these people are in, because it's the long winter. They don't have a lot of stores at Helm's Deep. You think they would have learned by Two Towers that they need to probably keep this place stocked and guarded a little bit better, but because they don't have a lot of firewood, they don't have a lot of stores.
you had Wormtongue basically in charge for so long, and
true.
Probably ruining everything. So
yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
What? Restock the Hornburg? No, you don't need to do that. So
they didn't. Okay, we don't need to. A wise decision, my lord.
Yes, my liege. What a wise decision. Husbanding of resources or whatever. Who knows? Yeah, it's like, but yeah. So I thought that the thing with Gandalf felt a little forced, but it was way less forced than the Aragorn reference at the end of the Hobbit movies, where, they tell Legolas, you must go and find Aragorn, the ranger. Yeah.
But you must discover his name for yourself.
Right. Yeah. Like, I felt that was actually more forced than this, where it's just like.
Yeah. It seemed fairly natural. Like, yeah. Because, Gandalf's already out, engaging in the White Council is a thing. He's out engaging, trying to discern what Sauron's plan is. He, looking out for his return, and, he knows of the ring, of course. So yeah, no, I didn't mind it at all. I thought it was like, oh, you can imagine her going off and like, maybe she kind of becomes one of Gandalf's agents. Yeah. And takes on missions to go do stuff. Like, you can make they could make a video game about Hera, and like, you just go on a bunch of quests in between. So maybe that's what these other movies will be, is about Hera.
Gandalf is Nick Fury. I'm here to talk to you about the Fellowship Initiative.
I'm putting a team together.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I'm not saying I had that thought exactly at the end of the movie, but I did. I thought I was about to say, I was like, are we gonna wait to the end to see if like Gandalf's there with Hera and be like, I want to talk to you about the Avengers or the Fellowship Initiative? Yeah, they're gonna be a post-credit scene.
They'll recast Gandalf for the next movie, but it'll be Samuel L. Jackson. He's got an eye patch.
No. Oh, I was going to say to make a joke, but it wouldn't have been appropriate because Samuel L. Jackson's many F-bomb laden references in his various movies.
Yes.
Oh my gosh! But yeah,
he has many names.
Oh, that threw me off. I was like, no. I'm like, I know Gandalf does have many names, but coming off the Rings of Power, it just makes me think of Sauron.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, no, and one last thing about Saruman is that he is still a good guy at this point.
Yeah.
He when he comes to Rohan, he's legitimately, trying to help them. But
because does he find the Palantir in the Tower of Orthanc, and then that's when he starts that's when the bad things start happening.
Did anybody get a good look at his did anybody get a good look at his staff? Because it shouldn't look like, in the movies, his staff looks like the pinnacle of Orthanc, but since he just got there, it shouldn't look, it shouldn't be his staff at this point.
I didn't get a good look at it.
He literally just moved in. So
I feel like it was pretty much the same staff. I'd have to look at it again, but yeah.
I'm Googling right now to see if I can find it.
Picture of the
Oh yeah, it is the same staff, but well, he just went out on his vision quest and found a branch of friendship and turned it into
what was the magic for him? Like, obviously for Gandalf it has to be friendship, but what was Saruman's magic? Like making stuff? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
That's why he turned bad. He didn't have friends.
Yeah.
He didn't have little hobbit friends to teach him the power of friendship.
Yeah, instead he was the only friends he had were those like masked guys, but then he didn't care about them either. And now we must be nearing the end of the review, because now we're just complaining about stuff from the Rings of Power. So so do you guys have any wrap up thoughts about War of the Rohirrim? And would you like to see more Middle Earth anime movies or animated movies in general?
Yeah, I mean, I know I already said, but I really enjoyed the movie, and like I said, I saw it twice, and I'll be excited when it comes out on home video. Like, this kind of kickstarted me, like, okay, I need to watch the Lord of the Rings soon, because I'm kind of combining it as part of that watch now. Like, it'll be part of my viewing when I watch these annually, or however often I watch them. I'll have to watch the War of the Rohirrim first as kind of a precursor. So yeah, it was really good, and I would love to see. I didn't really comment on the visuals. It didn't really take me out of it. I could notice things a little bit, but it didn't really bother me. So, I would like to see them more, but it would be nice if they cleaned those things up a little bit. But I understand, as production costs rise, and I'd rather them make something and it looks. I mean, I would say this looks good enough. I'd rather them make something like this, make more like this, rather than saying like, let's spend $400 million on an animated movie, and we get one every 5 years or something. So
yeah, at least there was no rotoscoping.
No one jumping over and falling
and tripping on their own sword. Yeah.
But yeah, nothing else for me, and enjoyed it. And we do have some feedback after Pat gives his final thoughts. Vinny?
Yeah, I generally thought it was good. It did not deviate from the lore in a what I would call a substantial way. I think it changed things primarily for narrative purposes that worked. Mm-hmm. The change worked, and it didn't mess anything up lore-wise. I thought picking Hera as the primary protagonist through which we viewed the movie was a great move. For a lot of different reasons. I enjoyed the fights. I enjoyed seeing Helm be Helm, right? He got to, he was both on the battlefield and in the councils. He wasn't that great of a mastermind or that, but he could punch a troll, so and break the troll's horn. I enjoyed pretty much all of the fight scenes, and part of me wishes that we had more. We'd gotten more time with several of the characters, and then just some of those animation things were problematic. So it's definitely not a perfect work for sure, but definitely good.
Yeah, and I think if anyone's hesitant about seeing it, don't be. Just see the movie, and please see the movie, because it doesn't seem to, it doesn't seem to, word of mouth doesn't seem to have gotten around as well. And I know anime is a tough sell here in America, on the big screen. But I really think that, if you are a fan of Lord of the Rings in any capacity, whether of the books or the films or the video games or anything, see this movie. Or if you're just a fantasy fan, I think you'll like it. So give it a shot. I thought it was great. It was just great to see Middle Earth on the big screen again. My only other one small nitpick was that, okay, you have the frame narrator of Eowyn narrating this film, and she's credited as Eowyn, and I'm like, you didn't think to have like little but it's just her voice. You didn't think to have a little intro or outro sequence where she is narrating this to her son Elberon.
Right.
It's like, come on, you missed the opportunity to show us a little bit of the Fourth Age. Just a little bit. Come on.
Yeah.
But besides that, I thought they missed a perfectly good opportunity for that. But Who knows why? But very small nitpick.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
maybe that's in the extended edition that'll come out.
Extended edition. Yeah, who knows? Yeah.
Deleted scene.
3 more hours of deleted scenes. Yeah. I'm definitely going to pick up there's a visual guide to this movie and also an art book with all the concept art that's coming out. So I will definitely be picking those up because I love those kind of books. I've got two whole shelves groaning under books of that type. So I'll definitely be picking that up. So yeah. And Jeff, you've collected some feedback for us.
Yeah, just a little bit from our I think mostly from our last episode. Our panelist friend Alex Murray said, "Excellent intro to the Rohirrim episode, gentlemen. I wanted to beat my shield with my sword and scream death while I was listening and walking the dogs this evening." So yeah. If anyone wants to, record themselves screaming death, you can do that and put it on the Discord. And if you do it in cosplay or have a shield and a sword, even more
imagine how confused the dogs would be if you're like, ride to ruin and the world's ending, and the dogs are just like, I just want to go poop somewhere. Like,
Yeah.
And then on Discord, Mercury said, "Great episode on the upcoming movie. Something Thomas said about Helm's death being metal reminded me of an article that was on the toast.com named The Most Metal Deaths in Middle-earth Ranked. Helm didn't make the list, but maybe that was due to lack of research." And he does indicate
totally
that
was,
it might be an adult, more of a, R-rated list. So, or for language or other content. So, and then Tom Grellinger said, "Great episode. Also, thanks for covering my question about the Daggerath, especially how the thoughts of Tolkien never fully developed. I also wondered, because of the questions, whether Middle-earth was supposed to be a prehistoric Europe. So a question of the return of Morgoth would seem out of place, but it was all fictional in the end. So if he'd wanted to flesh out the story, it would have been interesting to read." So
yeah, I definitely think that as Tolkien's thoughts developed and Middle-earth became very explicitly our Earth in the past, I think he realized that, like, oh wait, the events of the Daggerath are not exactly what, like, the book of Revelation describes as the end of the world. So I don't think he wanted to contradict anything that's in revealed scripture. So
yeah. I don't want to contradict sacred scripture.
Yeah.
So I'm not.
But it's a cool kind of alternate future, I guess, of the Lord of the Rings.
It's like Ragnarok. You have all the heroes who have died coming out of Valhalla to fight in this one final battle for all time. So it's something almost similar to that they do in Wheel of Time in both the books and the show, where you have when they have the great horn blowing, and it summons the dead heroes of the past. So
right. Yes. Okay, so that is it for our review of Lord of the Rings War of the Rohirrim. But before we go, we would like to take a brief moment to thank our patrons who make this podcast possible, including Chris P., Carl D., Michael K., Valkovius, and Rob G. Their generous donations help us to continue to create the Secrets of Middle-earth and all of our shows on StarQuest. And you can join them too at sqpn.com/give. And we'd love to hear from you, our listeners. What did you think of War of the Rohirrim? You can let us know on our Facebook page, on Twitter, by sending us an email to middleearth@sqpn.com, by leaving a comment on our YouTube channel, or by visiting this show's channel on the StarQuest Discord community at sqpn.com/Discord. Until next time, Jeff Haecker, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of Middle-earth.
Thank you, Thomas. And can't yell too loud because my kids are sleeping in the other room. But
and Patrick Mason, thank you as well.
You're very welcome. Good to be here. Death. Is that what we're saying? Are we okay? All right. Death.
And are you still cautiously optimistic, Pat?
I'm always cautiously optimistic. I am cautiously optimistic that the film will slowly build and do better in the theaters, and then we'll get another one. So
it will have a good afterlife in the halls of Valhalla, I suppose.
That's right.
And until next time, I am Thomas Salerno. Thank you for joining us on the Secrets of Middle Earth here on StarQuest. Forth Eorlingas!
Hi, folks. This is Dom Bettinelli, CEO of StarQuest. Over the years, the StarQuest network has continued to grow as a unique Catholic apostolate, bringing faith and culture together in ways that educate, inspire, and entertain. We're thrilled to have so many loyal supporters whose generosity makes all our shows possible. It's also a reality that over time, some of our supporters will step away from their giving. It is also true that the financial support that sustains this mission currently comes from fewer than 1% of those who enjoy our podcasts and videos. If we're to continue producing this life-changing content and expanding to reach new people, we urgently need new supporters to join us and current supporters to increase their assistance. This Advent and Christmas, the time when nonprofits like ours receive most of their support for the year, we're asking you to prayerfully consider becoming part of the StarQuest mission or increasing your support. Every gift of every size has a lasting impact. To make your tax-deductible gift, please visit sqpn.com/give. That's sqpn.com/give. Thank you for being part of the StarQuest family, and may God bless you abundantly this Advent and Christmas season.